Once upon a time, I bought a trailer. It was a good trailer, but despite its best efforts, it could not handle the demands I asked of it. We eventually decided to part ways because I knew I could never be faithful in this relationship that left me wanting. I wanted it all. I wasn't willing to compromise. I wanted a completely flat bed, 20 feet long, 8.5 feet wide, and I wanted removable sides. I needed pockets for chains, some long loading ramps, and a winch to fulfill my dreams. So I fired up SolidWorks and started down the path to making it a reality. In my excitement, this design had a fatal flaw. This is not one of those like forgetting your anniversary types, but more like forgetting to apply your parking brake when next to a cliff. So, for 10 points, see if you can spot it, and we'll reveal the fix at the end. With nothing but a vision and a stack of metal, I set off my journey. Was what I wanted even possible? Was I being unrealistic? After all, love is blind, and I had a welder. As I looked at the pile of metal before me, I felt great anxiety about the task ahead. However, I was determined and was not willing to let anything stand in my way. As I collected my thoughts and logic took hold, I decided to look at my prints that would guide me on my journey. Creativity would have to take a backseat, as engineering would be my guide. As rigid and uncompromising as my 4th grade teacher, the 90-degree angle clamp was unwilling to bend. However, its wisdom, while simple in concept, was pure genius. I insisted on installing 8-foot ramps that would be hidden under the trailer. However, the ramps insisted that I give them home and the love they deserved. I enlisted the capabilities of my plasma cutter to create 2 holes that would look deep into the soul of the trailer. I knew, in doing my part, the ramps would always feel secure. I welded a standard 2 5/16 ball coupler to the front frame members. While I had the greatest of intentions, I would find out later that this positioned the tongue of the trailer too high. I would be forced to sacrifice this attachment part and begrudgingly replace it with an adjustable mount. I did the best I could, but ultimately had to accept failure and knew its fate was sealed as I eventually lopped it in half and replaced it with a better coupler. They can't all be winners. While I was nowhere close to completion, my journey was starting to take shape. We call this shape a triangle. Minutes became hours, and hours became days. I refused to let my emotions get the best of me and continued to struggle towards the finish line. With the base structure in place, it was time to run the cross members. In an attempt to keep the trailer light and nimble, yet strong as an ox, I used 16th-inch wall box steel, 4 inches by 2 inches wide. I placed these on 12-inch centers, and I knew the 2x12 planks that would form the bed of the trailer would allow the cross members to share the burden I would ask of them. They would prosper, never bow, and would have the strength of 100 men. As I put the 2x6 by 1/8 wall tubing on the sides of the trailer, I knew the cross members would feel united in their strength. With the welding of the main structure complete and the ramp slides in place, there was no going back. The trailer, now wanting of axles, it was my responsibility to procure such an item. Luckily, I was able to find some 5,000-pound torsion axles at auction that made me look like a hero, while being a cheap ass. Axles, positioned in place, we now had a foundation to build the future on. These axles were odd, but they had a character of their own. They were designed for some other application, with some other worldly desire that I did not quite comprehend. I had to mount them at 45-degree angles to make them fit properly. They seemed bizarre to me, but have proven to have fortitude and strength, and have never floundered. These axles were wide, as if trying to reach the extents of the known world. However, I had different plans, and would force them to be narrower and fit the frame rails I created for them. They eventually decided to submit as I cut 8 inches out of their center, inserted a sleeve, and welded them back together. It was a sacrifice they were willing to do, because they're axles, and they're incapable of speaking. Even with the great strength that steel can offer, it'll never be able to defeat rust. The fierce iron moths are relentless and uncompromising. We decided that a heavy coat of paint was the only way to secure the kingdom. As we're now well into our journey, it was painfully clear that the trailer needed to be wired. Given its length and width, this meant 3 lights along each side and 3 across the back, with electronic brakes on all 4 hubs. This also meant a battery had to be installed for an emergency braking system. This may be a bit much for some people to handle, but it was a necessary task that can't be ignored. A mighty hole saw had to be awoken from its slumber to carve out a home for the LED lights. A lowly 2-axle trailer was asked to step into the shoes of giants to deliver the 2x12 planking that would provide the supporting structure required. A little bit lost and bewildered, the boards quickly discovered their purpose in life and were ready to be assimilated into their responsibilities. With a new coat of armor that only Bedliner can provide, the boards have the confidence they need for any battle they would see. With lights in place and reflective tape glimmering, the trailer made a statement that could clearly be seen. With the paint now dry and the boards comfortable in their homes, they were unexpectedly frightened as they were screwed to the frame. After dealing with the pain and fear, they accepted the new utility that they now experienced. Unexpected to the trailer, it was soon adorned with a new steel cage as if a crown had been placed on its head. A young prince had taken the throne. As if not completely ready to commit to its new bondage, it swung open its rear door to show its independence and rebellion. Before anything could get away and become unruly, all the sides were pinned together in a sign of unity. With the trailer secure but the sides lacking paint, they were uniformly stacked and coated with a majestic gloss black. Proud enough to stand on their own, the sides finished their drying against the fence for all to see. Back in place, as if they had never left, the kingdom was once again whole. Fitted with a new set of tires, it was ready to conquer the foreign lands. Mounted with a winch, sporting an uncompromising steel cable, it was ready to battle against those not willing to come aboard. After some travels, the battles were heavy. It turned out that the 15-inch wheels were just not up to the task. After a blowout, it became apparent that the larger 16-inch wheels with heavier-duty tires would be a burden that the trailer would willingly accommodate. Unfortunately, the trailer was never trained to do these heavier tasks, and the frame rails and bed had to be modified to make them fit. As a reward for its perseverance, it was decorated with a piece of diamond plate, which will forever immortalize its efforts. So back to the fatal flaw I mentioned at the beginning. The tongue of the trailer was welded to the front of the bed, and it needed to cross through the front and attach to the side rails. In doing this, all the tongue weight was essentially being supported by an 1/8-inch thick piece of sheet steel. After about an hour of traveling down the road, the entire trailer started to bend at the attachment point. To fix this, I welded a piece of 1/8-inch box steel to the bottom side of the frame to tie the tongue more rigidly to the rest of the trailer. This was a fun task because I had to weld it on the side of the road with a 110-volt welder running off the inverter in my truck. So I can thankfully say that after several years of severely overloading the trailer, it has never had a problem. So as the months turned into years and the battles became great, the trailer became the champion that could always be depended upon. After thousands of miles, it learned to love its servitude and became a trailer I could always depend on. We lived happily ever after.